Okay, fabulous. Hi, all. I'm Bailey Dickey. I lead networks here at GGV, and I'm excited to welcome everyone to our 6th annual Evolving Enterprise. This year, we're hosting a series of 7 masterclasses on different top-of-mind topics for CEOs and functional leaders. The series has been running every Wednesday from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. Pacific, and we'll keep going through April 13th. If you haven't already, you can view upcoming masterclasses and RSVP via a link I'll drop in the chat shortly. We definitely want to thank Silicon Valley Bank for their continued partnership on Evolving Enterprise and for helping making this series happen. I'm very excited to turn it over to my colleague Kunal Patel here at GGV to kick things off.
Awesome. Thank you, Bailey. Well, welcome everyone. Super excited to kick things off today. So as Bailey mentioned, my name is Kunal Patel and I lead BD at GGV. I spent the past 10 years working at early stage startups on the revenue side. And part of what I get to discuss today is really scaling go-to-market with 2 of my favorite revenue leaders in our portfolio. So I'm going to hand it over to Abbie and Kevin to introduce themselves, and we'll take it from there.
Hi, everyone. Abbie McBride. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer at WorkBoard. We're a Series D company, proudly in the GGV portfolio. We work primarily with enterprise buyers, though also work with some sort of scaling later stage startups. Before this, though, I was at a fintech that focused more heavily on SMB mid-market, and then prior to that, a company in the clean tech space, back focusing on enterprise that was acquired by Oracle. So I've seen the scaling of that through to then going to a big behemoth. So excited to be here today and a little under the weather, so apologies for my gravelly voice. Kevin.
Awesome. Hey everyone, I am Kevin. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer at Vercel. We make essentially tools to help developers succeed. We provide both hosting as well as an open source framework called Next.js. Prior to Vercel, I've been one of the first handful commercial hires at a couple of different startups. Trade.io, another GGV portfolio company, Neo4j, graph database company. Most of my career centered around infrastructure automation and developer tools and open source. And so, yeah, I'm excited to be here and get to share the stage with Abbie.
Awesome. Well, thank you both. So we want to keep this pretty interactive. We received a bunch of questions from everyone who registered. First off, thank you for that. We'll go through some of those. If you have other questions along the way, feel free to enter them in the chat and we'll continue to just keep it interactive. So let's kick it off with one of my favorite questions, especially when I've done a few of these now before, is maybe we'll start with Kevin and just thinking about that whole transition from what a lot of our portfolio companies are doing today, which is going from founder-led sales to really a sales leader and operationalizing sales. We'd love to hear from your perspective what's really key and important in that early stage, and then Abbie, especially as you get later on in the process, what that looks like from your perspective as well.
Cool. No, this is actually one of my favorite topics about like founders and early stage companies. I tend to think it's two major components. One is in terms of timing, where I think folks tend to mess this up is they do it too early or they do it before they have product market fit, where we as like revenue leaders, like we're really great, we're really, really special, but we cannot synthesize product market fit for you. And so when we're working, when you deploy a sales leader into an early stage company, we're going to accelerate that growth line. But if you don't have 10 plus customers, you don't have folks who are able to extract value and have an affinity for your product, you're going to bring in a salesperson and they're going to be really, really frustrated. And they're going to spend a bunch of time banging their head into the wall, trying to get folks to talk to you, folks to buy your products. And you're going to burn a bunch of capital. Salespeople are very expensive and you're not going to end up incrementing the business forward. In terms of actually making that person successful, saying you have 10 plus customers, you have maybe $1 million in revenue, and you're really starting to scale that go-to-market organization. I think your first sales leader is nearly always going to be an evangelist. And what I mean by that is this person is going to go out and you're going to try and copy paste your vision and your perspective on the world into this person. And you're going to want them to go out and really scale that thing and find a way to translate that from your typically technical vision into impact and value for the business. And so when you're onboarding that person, expect to spend the first 90 days just on dozens and dozens and dozens of calls with them, spending lots and lots of time really trying to transmit like the spirit and temperament of your business and your vision for the company into that person. Back at, for example, for Vercel, for my first quarter, Guillermo and I, my founder CEO, we drove all up and down the city, sitting out with customers. And what was great is he led most of those interactions. And I spent most of my time observing, how does he talk about the product? How does he tell our origin story? When he demos the product, when he, for example, an engineering leader, how are they reacting? What are the things they ask questions about? And that gave me this great basis for them saying, okay, what types of reps do I need to go out and hire? And then how am I going to try and create, again, a value prop that we can go out and sell for this business?
Yeah, that seems critical in order to partner closely with the founder and just being able to understand the story, understand the vision, and then translate that into how you build out the team over time.
Yeah. And another thing I'll emphasize there is just as a founder or as the person who's going to manage the salesperson, you kind of got to really like them. And I think folks sometimes will hold their nose and hire someone has an incredible resume, who, I mean, seems like they're just going to be a great fit in terms of the ability to drive revenue. But especially like the founders, you were going to spend so much time with people like us that you earnestly need to be like, you know what, I enjoy spending time with this person. Because that, I think, again, leads to that rapport and that success for again, that early stage seller.
Yeah, spot on. And Abbie, I don't know if you want to add on to that, especially as you get kind of later stage and you come into a situation where it may have had previous leaders, you've been working closely with the CEO. What do you think of those ways of just keeping that transition alive?
Yeah, I think, first of all, I loved already being Kevin saying we're great and special people. So awesome for us, awesome for me too. So you should definitely like spending time with the sales that you hire. But I think I would plus one everything he said around like you need the evangelist, you need someone who's actually like absorbing and it is like a second mouthpiece for your founder when you're really early. I think as you grow, you start to the person that is really good at being like an excellent rep out there evangelizing and getting deals done is not necessarily the same skill set that can scale an organization. We all as people, lean towards spending time where we're like good at something or we like it and we enjoy it. And if someone's really good and really loves being in the deals, it is hard for that same person to invest the same amount of mental energy and time in building the like structure you need for a scaling business. So that's like hiring, building out like enablement, building out roles that aren't direct salespeople. And so I think you've got to kind of be aware of when that inflection point happens. And if you have if the same person in seat is someone to lead the whole org, or are they a rep? Are they like a first line leader that are good at leading a small team? But it's oftentimes not the same person from like 1 to 8 or 10 as it is from 10 and beyond. The good news is, unlike a lot of roles, you can often retain that person while you hire someone else to kind of like scale the business. It's often quite doable. But again, as you get bigger, you're looking for someone who can make it more repeatable because you can't go along with the founder on every call once you get to anything over a couple $1 million.
Yeah, it sounds like needs obviously change as you continue to evolve the business, grow the business, and the things you needed early on are going to be definitely different later on down the line.
Yeah.
Great. That also brings up a great question around what do you look for when you hire? So when hiring, how does it differ as you grow the business? And maybe Abbie, we'll start with you and then move it over to Kevin.
Sure. I think there's and everyone, you'd ask like different sales leaders, people are going to have like different core things they look for. I'd say if I think on this, like kind of no matter what scale or size, I'd say, you're looking for someone with a track record of like success. And I think for our size companies, it's like also growth, not just repeatability of like, I can do this same job again and again, and I'm pretty good at it, but like I can adapt and grow and take on additional responsibilities. That doesn't mean I've gone to become a leader. It just means I have shown that I don't just have to like take my same playbook or same sort of carbon copy along. I'm really big on like intellectual curiosity. I'm not a lifelong salesperson, and I think salespeople in general can be like, you get a bad rap as like a used car salesperson. I think that like the best salespeople, if nothing else, they're super curious about the customers they're working with and understanding what their business is like. And the more you understand it, the more you're mapping to whatever solution you have. And so really kind of someone who's got the interest and intellect to dig in there. And then I'd say a real strong combination of like both collaborative, definitely a team sport, like lone wolves, particularly in smaller, ever evolving companies, it's very tough to be successful. And then super competitive. I think that's like a kind of a critical baseline skill for a salesperson. I'd say early stage, you don't like a lot of what Kevin mentioned, more evangelism, more, you don't necessarily need to be good at like building process. You got to be awesome at prospecting. You can kind of do bespoke deals. Like, sure, we'll build this on the roadmap for you. Like, okay, whatever. You want to pay us in 90 days? You want to pay us 100 days? Great. You can't do that as your like later stage. You have people that are like excellent at execution. Like they're predictable. They're delivering when they say they're going to deliver. They're delivering kind of within a little bit more of a box than you've got. But you still need some adaptability. I mean, we're not hiring into Salesforce, at this point. And then the only other thing I'd say is early stage, depending on your industry and how focused you are on a specific industry, you might earlier orient towards someone with industry expertise, or frankly, like a address book. I don't know what to call it today, a contact list. Like you're just selling to the industry, to the insurance industry. Someone who can quickly get you like meetings in that industry.
Yeah. It seems like early on you want to have those relationships and come with whatever the equivalent of a book of business would be.
Yeah. Speeds up the prospecting that you got to do when you're the first or third rep.
Yeah.
And to dovetail on what Abbie said there, I think not only is that like that Rolodex really, really important, but also at least at most of the startups I've worked at, the ability to train and coach junior employees is non-existent. And so making sure you're hiring a rep who's actually closed for, a couple of years, has seen a bunch of patterns and sales cycles, where not until you are, I'll say 25 plus, maybe 15, if you're great at enablement, can you really start to grow reps. Obviously there are going to be exceptions. You can hire highly curious, highly flexible, incredibly smart people, but you're going to end up with a lot of thrash in the business unless they are saying, hey, I know that the next step here is we're going to do red lines. And then from here, we're going to go, through this step and this step and this step, and are able to actually walk through that cycle.
Yeah, that's great. And I think that leads into kind of the question that Thierry just asked, as well as one that we had before, which is, what are typical ramp periods for the hires you make? And what are the best ways to assess performance? And then I have a follow-up on that as well.
Abbie, do you want this one? Oh, sure.
I mean, you go first. I will come on to yours.
Yeah, and so I'm going to give like a very typical non-answer. I think in really, really, really early stage, where again, you're going from that transition from founder-led sales to your first few reps, it's incredibly difficult to really assess that performance. And revenue is king. Are they generating revenue for your business? Are they actually closing logos? The thing I'll call out is, especially as you're hiring those first few sellers, to be incredibly explicit in terms of what you're asking your go-to-market team to optimize for. Whether it's, hey, we are in learning mode, I need to go out and find design partners, and I think they look like this. I'm going to goal you in terms of like that ramp period in progress is going to be measured against acquiring those target, ICP, ideal customer profile logos. Or is it, hey, we're in like claim the space mode, and our goal is just to go out and land and seed as many logos as we can. We're I keep trying to use acronyms. We're annual contract value insensitive. We just want the logo and the MSA. Or is it we don't want to raise capital and we want to be as profitable as possible. You need to get me deals. They're gonna have high gross margins such that we can again generate revenue for the business. And then measuring them against those axes, as well as at the end, you can look at the more simple things, which are going to be, are they able to progress a deal from stage to stage? As you've kind of defined the the awareness stage, learning phase, then evaluation, procurement, saying how long is it taking you to increment between those stages, and then cross-sectionally tracking that over time. Are you able to move that thing forward? But I'm super curious to know what Abbie's thoughts are on this side.
I would say, I think I agree with, I mean, if this is additive, I think like pure numbers, I think if you're talking like an SMB, mid-market, mid-enterprise, you would expect like 3 months. And ramp, in this case, I'd say ramp being up to someone where you're like expecting them to deliver what would be the equivalent of like a monthly quota or quarterly quota, even if they're on an annual plan. Enterprise, it's wildly longer. Every VC will tell you it should be 6 months. It's tough. Depends on the length of the sales cycle. I think a lot of companies, as they're scaling, it's so lumpy and it's super unpredictable because you've got like 4 or 5 reps or 7 reps and your deals are kind of like this. So it's really hard to measure. I think when you start to get to like 20, 25, 30 reps, you can start to have a little more predictability. And then an awesome target, I think, for like an enterprise is somewhere around like 6 to 7 months where they're ramped to capacity. And so then it's like, well, what the heck do we do in the interim? Like, I don't want to wait 7 months to know if someone's good. And so a lot of that is, I think, like some of the things Kevin mentioned, I'm like, are they doing, say they have a target around setting like net new meetings. What activity is being done to drive the meetings? How many meetings are converting? How many meeting conversions are moving through the pipeline? And like, are they moving at pace? We also, one of the things which is not probably a problem for most of yet, but it becomes a problem to get bigger, is like you have new reps that either you're like, they closed some business, but I think they just got a bluebird, like, or they had an expansion opportunity. They just kind of got lucky. This one over here has closed nothing, but I can tell they're good. Like I know they're good. And that doesn't scale either. It also can be an HR problem. So you have to actually put some like metrics outside of deal closing around it. And I think, again, it's like, you can talk about like pipeline movement, you can certify people, you can grade their role plays, you can do things to evaluate how people are ramping. Because you also need to understand where to lean in and invest if they're not being successful.
Yeah, that's fair. The ramp question continues to get a lot of traction, especially in a remote world where you used to have reps who are sitting around, you're overhearing each other, you're learning from each other, and that is so hard to replicate in a Zoom environment. What are you two trying to do in order to help AEs and different team members just ramp in general, knowing that they can't just overhear these conversations every day?
I would say I was going to say one other challenge that we've confronted in the past year is we've done an enormous amount of hiring. And so you have the minority on the team that has been in place for more than a year. And that's something you confront Zoom or not, where so your manager's new and your solutions consultant's new and your peer is new. So you're like the blind leading the mute, leading the deaf on Zoom. And you're like, it's really hard to figure out how to get people successful. I think one of the challenges we have with Zoom is our team's big enough, it can be a little easy to hide on a call, like you can be on the second screen with your and you may be sort of paying attention, but you're really missing like content. So we've tried to do like some smaller group forums, content we would have delivered in a larger setting. We deliver at a regional meeting where it's going to be 7 people instead of 40, role plays where you're doing breakout rooms to get people, more engaged. One thing we're rolling out now is trying to like cross team mentoring, or just, phone a friend who's been here for more than, 12 months. But it's, the in-person learning is hard to replicate. We're launching like an LMS where people record videos of themselves and, you can hear, but it's tough.
Yeah. We continue to do the same thing. And it's interesting to hear how you can try to solve for that through either, whether it's sales enablement, LMS, HR, whatever else it might be, to be able to help support people on their onboarding. Kevin, I don't know if you have any tricks or tips on what you've been doing at Vercel.
I mean, I think it's absolutely an open question. What we've noticed is the more junior the employee is, the more difficult I think the remote work is. If they don't have a lot of sales experience, it's really, really, really tough for them to kind of get that organizational knowledge. Our more senior reps actually seem to be ramping as fast, if not faster. because they're not traveling as much for deals, they're getting lots of at bats. They learn our motion really quickly and they're like, oh, okay, no problem. And it's just all pattern matching. The way in which we've tried to mitigate the remote, onboarding, we super over invested in terms of like what our new onboarding capabilities are. We try to put reps in like a 15 to 30 day. The model, like mental model we use is like Disneyland style onboarding, where like we are going to like run you through like general ed, go to market, your role specific, and be really intentional about just creating a shared nomenclature across, hey, this is our sales framework. These are the way we talk about deals. This is the way we assess deal risk, and being hyper intentional about being explicit about the way we sell. And then from there, we're in the earliest throes of it. Always going back to customer stories, where we try to end up having reps on a relatively frequent cadence show up. And then we use a sales framework called Spiced. We run through these deals together and say, hey, what was the situation that you were going in, to kind of create a one-to-many scaling of kind of like those anecdotal stories that like a great rep will always have in their pocket of prospects says, oh, we're thinking about this. Oh my gosh, it's just like when Airbnb did this with us. This was the process. This was their story. And it creates a little bit more of that fluidity in the way in which we sell our products. But again, it's super difficult. I like, we haven't grokked it. If y'all know people in chat, please let us know who've grokked this. Like we want help.
Yeah, that's fair. And there's that continued question of just what tools are you using to help facilitate this, right? I know Zoom, Slack, there's things out there, but LMS tools or anything else that you think are being useful for reps as they get onboarded?
Well, we use like call recordings, which I think helps. Like we put for this quarter, every frontline manager has with Target, they have to, every single rep on their team has to have a coaching conversation about a deal call every week. And so part of that is either you have to sit in with them on a call, or you got to listen to a recording and make notes on the recording and share it and, discuss it. So I think that's pretty important to be able to hear. And then you can also share, and that's really useful for onboarding, to share, this is a good call record. Like here are some good examples of, experienced reps doing call recordings. I mentioned we're just launching an LMS, which I think will be really helpful in scaling the enablement, like a little more self-paced. Again, like you can upload recordings of yourself delivering pitch decks or whatever it is that, you want the teams to be able to use. I think we also have less of an enablement, but more of a like lights on piece of, we use Clary for sort of pipeline analytics. So that just helps. We were kind of doing some bespoke stuff on top of Salesforce, but helps you understand, like back to what we're talking about ramping, like how, like get a view on how deals are consistently moving through the pipeline and how reps are performing against averages.
Yeah, that's great. I think the recording piece is so huge for coaching and just being able to get in the weeds of deals with folks who you may not be able to meet with every day.
And you do realize, like, people use Zoom a lot before COVID, but you did travel, particularly if you were selling enterprise, you were in meetings with your team members, and then you'd walk out to the parking lot and talk about it. And we just have to, like, you got to replicate. So that same thing, by the way, happens on prep. Like prep's a little shoddy at times too, because you're not going in person and it feels, so in some ways you just got to be like, we've actually gotten super prescriptive with our frontline managers on how exactly what they need to do to like manage their teams to success, beyond just the call coaching stuff, just to make sure there's consistent experience.
Yeah, that's great. I love it. Well, great. Well, let's transition a little bit. I know there's been a bunch of questions around how to just track performance of sales teams. And so I want to start with a question around metrics, and maybe we'll start with Kevin on early stage metrics to track on a sales team. So if you think about building out a sales team from day one, what are those metrics you're looking at outside of just, dollars in the door revenue? What are things you look at across the team and just the sales organization as a whole?
Yeah, in terms of looking at my sales leaders, I'm really big on like forecast accuracy. I think no matter what stage you're in, it demonstrates an ability for you, essentially your sales leader, your go-to-market leaders, to understand in terms of from like lead all the way down to revenue, essentially like they need to be able to call their shot, even if the shot is bad. If they're like, we're going to miss this number by 50%, they need to have developed that intuition around your business where, hey, we know this many leads are, create this many opportunities fall out and then in this rate, and it creates this many deals of this size. And so I think that's always building that muscle early helps you understand where do I need to invest across the funnel, whether we have a pipe gen problem, I need to go hire more content marketers, I need to go hire more, developer relations engineers, or is it a conversion or funnel problem? Kind of looking into that layer below when I'm looking at individual reps. Again, in the earliest stages, I'm much more often, provided that we have all created shared nomenclature on this is what this stage is defined as, looking at how well are they progressing from stage to stage versus, again, our cohort of reps to say, hey, it looks like this rep is struggling to move from proof of concepts into procurement. What does that mean? Why is that? And that's when which I'm looking at like the health of my rep, whether it's either for coaching or, hey, you know what, they're all up just behind in terms of the way in which kind of our expectations for this organization. Beyond that, like the big macro health metric I look at for my sales organization is net dollar retention. And it's again, it's not in terms of the actual execution of that retention, but the thing, again, hiring incredibly talented sellers, we can tend to force the year one deal in. We'll say a bunch of stuff, we'll sell a bunch of product that doesn't exist, and we'll get people to buy. But the problem is that, for especially a lot of the execs on this call, we know we're upside down year one typically. We've invested a bunch of money in that customer, and it's not until years 2, 3, 4, 5 that we're actually getting that lifetime value. And so I always look at, are we selling the right deals? Are we selling to the right customers? As again, like an overall health metric for, am I pointing my organization in the right direction?
Yeah, that's completely fair. It's and I know you probably don't mean it that you can throw anything against the wall. It's obviously within scope.
But again, like it's not healthy for the business long term. That's why we need to be very specific in terms of when we look to our sales org. Hey, like what is success for this business? It is a thriving customer base that is growing over time. Not we're not doing like old school perpetual licensing deals where I say, hey, if I can get that perpetual license landed in a bunch of shelfware, it doesn't matter. Like essentially our buyers have gotten more sophisticated and they hold us accountable month by month, year by year to deliver value to their business. And you got to make sure sales teams aligned to again finding folks who are going to get that.
Yeah, that's fair. And Abbie, as you get later in the ramping of revenue, what are some of the metrics you look for on the sales side?
It doesn't, that a lot of that doesn't change that much. Like I think it's a lot. I mean, you're obviously looking at performance. You're looking at everything from like new pipe created during a given period of time, what the overall pipeline looks like for the rep at different stages. So basically like a weighted pipeline, and dollars closed. Those are all, for the most part, lagging indicators. And so you may, for someone who's either newer or those indicators are not so strong, or they aren't consistently so strong, then we go like further up funnel and we look at, again, some of the stuff I talked about earlier. Are they setting like net new meetings? Like, are they doing the like work to get the meetings through? How are things converting? Like, are they filling their pipeline? God, if I just look at their pipeline, it looks awesome. And everything's at stage one and it never moves out of stage one. So you have to get a level of like granularity under that to understand really sort of how things are actually progressing. I agree fully on the like forecast accuracy piece. This is more of a gut feel one, but like, are they like leaning in to like make the deal like happen, And I think there's, I say that only because like at the beginning of a quarter, in our business, at least, no one has line of sight for sure to hitting a specific number. But if they just gave us like, I'm positive I can get this, it's like sort of someone like is in the trenches with you. That's not a metric. That's a gut feel one, not super scalable.
Yeah, hard to scale that.
Yeah.
And then in terms of other functions to support go-to-market, right? There's everything from sales enablement, sales engineering, strategy. When do you think is the right time to layer that into the organization? How do you think about bringing that on as you scale the business?
I would say ops and enablement needs to be earlier than you think, like no doubt. by the time you hire those functions, you're already late for sure, because you kind of were like, I can't really justify it. My sales leader can train them. He or she, like, I can do Salesforce, and you're just too late. Like, you don't have either like the lights on what's actually happening in business, or you're not set up to train people, because an enablement person does not come in the door knowing how to train the next 10 people. And the training you thought was good for the first 10 may have been great for the first 10. It might have been okay, but they had the founder next to them selling. So, you need, I would say those are like, by the time you're at, it depends a little bit on what your leader's focus is, but by the time you're at, 7 to 10 reps, I definitely have ops, and then beyond, like by 15 or so, you definitely want enablement. Someone to ride shotgun, whether it's a solutions engineer or solutions consultant, it depends a little bit on the complexity of your product. Like, if it's not very technical and you don't need a high level demo that a sales rep can't do, you can push it a little longer than if you need a technical resource on every deal call and you want to stop borrowing from engineering. But it again goes to, like, it's really hard to be the sole person on a customer call. Like, you need another person listening, just to change a voice, just to pick up on cues, to see things. And so when that can't be either like your sales leader or the founder, which again is probably around the like 7 reps time, you need at least one person, like a solutions consultant, solutions engineer or such, to ride along on deals and participate in them. And I would just say it's hard. It's always easy to justify a quota carrying headcount. It's a little harder to get the ones like supporting it. So also think about, okay, like Abbie's my rep, man, her attainment is pretty low. Like, what do I expect her attainment? My enablement person could bump her attainment by 10%, and she's one person. I have a team of 7. Like, just think about the math of how much of a attainment bump you need sort of across your whole team to justify a headcount. And then you can kind of do the math on whether it's worth it. It usually always is.
Yeah.
And to like emphatically join Abbie on, like, if folks take nothing else from me on like this hour, getting that like sales ops hire in way earlier than you think. My first hire tends to be like my rev ops partner, my sales ops partner, just because getting your data and your structures right from the start is like the highest leverage thing you can do for your sales organization. Where if your sellers are focused on selling, not trying to figure out how to go from like a sales contact form to get a reply into your sales rep, managing all those different like gnarly processes that can eat up a huge amount of time. Like, I cannot emphasize enough how important that is for a successful, especially if you're looking at like product-led growth or like open source driven businesses where you have a huge amount of noise and only a little bit of signal. That hire is so critical. And then the other thing, also another plug for what Abbie was saying in terms of bringing on that technical partner for your sellers early. Like, sales engineers are like my favorite like persona in a go-to-market org, where they're the like ultimate generalist, where is actually the thing I learned back at Neo is our sales engineers not only did professional services for us, they did technical support for us, they did developer relations for us, where again, you're hiring an evangelists who want to talk to customers, who want to solve customer problems. You may overpay them a little bit. They may be more hands-on keyboard than your at-scale sales engineer. But these are the people who you as a CEO or a product leader are going to spend a huge amount of time with, saying like, hey, Kevin says we really need to build XYZ feature. Can you give me a little bit more texture on what they're trying to solve? And they say, oh, well, here's this thing, we can build this shim. And it becomes, again, another huge accelerant for success, again, in like hyper technical products. My window of expertise is like developer sales, open source, but like for those businesses, I can't emphasize how important they are.
Yeah, that's awesome. The former SC in me really appreciates your answer. One other question around other types of services to add on to go to market is around partnerships and channel sales. How have you thought about developing those, and when's the right time to invest in those types of sales?
Sure. I have a really hot take on this, but this is again experience of one. I tend to tell folks to run away from partnerships, especially in their early days. And I'll be like less glib. If they fall in your lap and a pipeline partnership opens up, absolutely go do it. The hard part, or if it's an ecosystem play where you say, hey, we are primarily a platform, we really only succeed when customers are using, again, several other products in our category along with us. Run that through product, but not through go to market. I think one of the failure modes that I see with a lot of companies is they say, oh my gosh, Deloitte wants to work with me. They get really, really excited. They know Deloitte does huge, huge, huge deals. And they don't recognize that it takes 5 humans full time to support a partnership with a global services integrator. It takes an enormous amount of effort to really learn how to do indirect, because again, like we in early stage products, we don't actually quite know our value prop. We don't know our whole sales cycle. We don't know who are all our champions, all the other pieces. Trying to like transmit that to a third party is incredibly difficult and eats up a huge amount of cycles and is not going to be as accretive early on. Again, I that's my hot take.
That's fair. I can see that. Abbie, do you have another perspective on it?
I fully agree. It can seem super attractive and it can just suck you all in. And Deloitte, as an example, I can't remember what the number was, but this is ballpark, right? We had a comment that they were trying to hire 10,000 people, like maybe like 4 months ago. And when you think about that at scale and the dollars that any of our companies could bring to a Deloitte, it is really hard to see how we matter. And I don't mean to pick on like Deloitte, but it's just hard to be important to companies of that size and scale, and it can suck a lot of your energy. I think the 2 caveats are agreed, like smaller firms. So our business is like business, is more of a sale to the business, not a technical buyer. And there's a lot of like strategy consulting firms where there are tons of little bespoke ones that are super interested in either reselling or delivering. We matter to them. There are 5 people firms, there are 8 people firms. That can be a really helpful balance. Either for us, we don't want to serve, we're not serving the SMB market, but we get leads from that market. So we give them as a reseller, and they also can help supplement our delivery in larger places. So I think that's one. And then there are certain industries where the bulk of purchases go through a third party. And you just need to, like, if that's your business, it's going to be hard to break into if there's sort of almost like a gatekeeper. But otherwise, agree. You can put a lot of hope and suck the life out of you on betting on these strategies too early.
Yeah, I think we've seen a lot of companies go down those paths of trying to create these large partnerships, and what it could do is suck a lot of time and energy, which is not good for business as well. So I know we've got a little bit of time left. What I want to do is see if there's any other questions in the chat, but also I'll ask one last question before handing it over to the audience here. But what's a common mistake you should avoid when building out a GTM team? And just one, it could be 1 or 2 things, whatever you think, but what's kind of the main takeaway that you would give a lot of advice to here?
Oh, are you ceding to me? Was that, I couldn't tell. I was like, I'm not next to you. I kind of already said this. I would say hiring either like ops or enablement too late. Like that is a extremely common mistake, and one that will definitely set you back several months. And then I'd put it like a 1B to this, which is like knowing how much runway you expect to get out of, a leader or the people you're hiring. Like I said, it's very rare that you find someone who can take you from like 1 to 10 that can also take you to 100, that can take you to 200, and so being clear about what you need for the next 12 to 18 to 24 months in a sales leader, and not kind of fooling yourself of you want someone to scale $100 million organization when you're at 2 million.
Yeah.
When I was like writing my notes for this call, like Abbie exactly aligned on the getting that ops team early. The other, I guess the other bullet points I'd call out is like one, just like moving with urgency and moving quickly, where deals don't need to be perfect. If you have a customer that says, hey, like I can only buy in this format in this way, it's okay if your first 25, 30, 50 customers all look a little bit weird, you can start to normalize your customers and your go-to-market motion as you scale. But building those like design partnerships and those relationships early are so critical at getting that feedback loop. That's one big one of like, doesn't have to be perfect, just go. The other one I call out is like, find product market fit before really scaling your sales org. We're really expensive. We eat up a bunch of resources. And if you're still trying to figure out, do people want my product? Are they willing to pay for it? You're just burning runway, and the sales org can't be accretive to the business until we find that product market fit. And then the last one is make sure to train early within your sales org to bring stories back to the mothership, whether it's success or failure. One of the things I've screwed up a bunch of times is I will go and ask product for this feature. They'll work all night long. Our engineering team will burn themselves out to deliver me this new feature. And I close the deal and never say a word about it. We just keep going and say, okay, what's the next thing? And bringing back, hey, thank you so much for building that incredibly gnarly, boring enterprise feature. This is what happened. This is how you changed, XYZ company's business. Because you did that, now they can use us in this way. And thank you so much. And look at the success we're having together. Building that relation between sales and engineering early of, we're not just asking for stuff to ask for stuff, but here's kind of how you impact us when we work together.
Yeah, that's great. It's always nice to share those wins across the entire organization rather than just sales sitting in a bucket trying to take down all these deals. It looks like we have another question from Tyler regarding, are you starting to invest in in-person retreats? So think about a post-COVID world. How do you think about bringing the team together? Would love to get both of your perspectives on what that looks like for your teams.
We've done regional meetings, like of some, but kind of up to the sales leader if they're gathering the teams together regionally. And then we're all getting together in person in 6 weeks. So yes. Yeah, nice. And I think the other piece, which I don't know where everyone in here is based, but one thing that was clear, like some of our teams in other parts of the country have been meeting in person with customers, even just for lunch or coffee, for a year and a half. And it's definitely helpful. And I think in the Bay Area, we definitely are slower to getting out to meeting with customers in person, not just meeting, internally with our team.
Yeah, and I see Tyler added a little bit more context. In terms of, so he said, I was curious in relation to training and enablement. We're starting to, for example, we've gotten folks together just to even do a little bit of that, like cultural onboarding of like, hey, here's the way which we comport ourselves as like members of Vercel, as members of our company. We're starting to do it more and more. I think probably this last month and a half, we've started to watch that activity tick up in terms of, hey, when you join, we fly you out to HQ. We spend a little bit of time together, just again, meeting people, putting names to faces. A bulk of the training and onboarding is still primarily remote, but we try and create that like, that, hey, this isn't just like a weird video game that you play every day on Zoom. Like we're a real company, we're real people, and creating that relationship.
Yeah, exactly. It seems like we're in this post-COVID world where bringing people together, thinking about the thoughtful ways to do it and start to create that cohesion across teams again is starting to be very top of mind. Well, great. Well, look, this has been such an awesome conversation. Kevin, Abbie, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, your thoughts on scaling go-to-market. I know it's been a bunch of great nuggets for everyone to hear here. Looking forward to a couple more sessions we have on the evolving enterprise market, and we'll be sharing out more of this to come in the next few weeks. So thank you so much for attending, and we look forward to seeing you all again.
Bye. Thank you all.
Thanks.
All right.
Bye.
Thank you.